Dva suparna sayuja sakaya samanam vriksham parishashvajate tayoranyaha pippalam svatpatyanashnan anyo abhichakashiti. One of the most popular Upanishad statements. We keep often referring to this profound declaration from the Mundaka Upanishad. And as we begin the countdown to the crescendo of the song Celestial, as we begin our countdown to the Charama Shloka, it is only appropriate that we reflect on the purport of this all-important declaration of the Upanishad, which is also very appropriate to the context of Krishna's clarion call to Arjuna. Dva suparna sayuja sakaya samanam vriksham parishashvajate tayoranyaha pippalam swadvatyanashnan anyo abhichakashiti. So this is a very vividly described analogy that makes us easily understand the very story of our lives. It seems there were two birds perched on a branch of a tree. There was one bird immersed in sorrow, which was constantly plucking away and eating the fruits of the tree. Whereas the other bird was all glorious, blissful, glowing, radiant, silently witnessing and watching the other bird. The Upanishad beautifully captures the Jivatma and the Paramatma perched on the branch of a tree, which is nothing but this physical body. The bird that is immersed in sorrow, which is constantly going on eating the fruits of the tree, some bitter, some sweet, represents the state of the Baddha Jiva bound to samsara. With misidentification, the Jiva continues to perform actions which are centered around body gratification and continues to reap, sow and reap karma, good and bad. And as long as this Jivatma, which is bound to Prakriti, to the body made of matter, continues to perform actions which are carried out with its consciousness locked at the level of the body, it fails to recognize its companion, the Paramatma. The destination is perennially waiting, and we are lost in search of our destiny. That is the sorry state of our lives. What we seek is always with us. What we seek is always with us. But unfortunately, we are lost trying to find, discover our own destiny, and in that process, we are stuck in a cycle of transmigration. Life after life, we are completely lost in terms of what is, after all, the purpose of this life. That is why it is said, the purpose of life is to first find out what is life. We seldom ask this question. We don't seem to ask ourselves the simple yet profound question as to what are we doing? What are we doing here and why are we doing what we are doing? How many times we ask this question to ourselves? The Upanishad goes on to give a solution to this seemingly eternal problem of transmigratory existence. Samane vrikshe purusho nivagno nishe shochati mukhyamanaha jushtam yada pashyati anyam isham asya mahimanamiti vita shokaha. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno anishaya shochati mukhyamanaha. All that it takes for the first bird which is immersed in sorrow is to turn around and acknowledge its companion. Acknowledge the presence of its companion. The companion has always been there, all the time, eternally waiting. The destination also happens to be our companion. How beautiful it is when we start reflecting on this. The destination that we are seeking has been our companion for eternity. Krishna, the goal, the destination, is also our companion. And we fail to recognize his companionship through innumerable lifetimes that we have spent so far in samsara. The Upanishad says, the moment this first bird immersed in sorrow, which represents the Jivatman, turns around and recognizes that resplendent Paramatma seated patiently next to it, it says, the solution to all the problems has been discovered. That one moment of discovery of one's companion is enough, is the key for destination eternal. So Krishna, throughout the Gita, we see how he, being Arjuna's companion, constantly keeps guiding him throughout. And for Arjuna, it took a lot of time to recognize that the one who has been guiding him as a charioteer has always been available to him, even before the Mahabharata war. Right at the beginning of the Gita, Krishna's discourse begins in a very, very categorical manner. Krishna says, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nachaiva rabhavishyavaha sarve vayam atah param, he says. Hey Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, when you did not exist, nor any of these rulers all around did not exist, nor will there be a time in the future when any of us will cease to exist. Immediately, he continues with that and he says, Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi dhiraha tatrana mukhyati. Dhira, a wise man, does not get deluded here, Arjuna. Who is the one who is wise? One who is truly wise recognizes that one is on a journey. Even as we live this very life is a journey which is nothing but a small segment in a very long journey. Now, what is the small segment of this journey? Krishna says, this journey, in this very journey, the Atman goes through several phases. The Dehi, the indweller of the Deha, first goes through the phase of childhood, then youthhood, then adulthood, then age takes over, and when the utility of the body comes to an end, it moves on and takes another body and moves on. another life, another birth, another life, another death, another birth. Goes on and on and on. Hey Arjuna, dhiraha namuhyati. A dhira, a wise man, does not get deluded because the wise man understands that the Atman has to go through this journey with this vehicle called the body. Now, interestingly, Arjuna at that point in time did not ask an all important question. Arjuna, we know, is a great question. When it comes to asking questions, we are ever grateful to Arjuna for asking he asks 18 questions throughout the Gita. And we have discussed in detail each question of Arjuna, the context of the question and Krishna's answers. But there is one question which Arjuna did not ask right at the front of at the beginning of the Gita. Thankfully to us, when Krishna declared, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipaha nachaiva nabhavishyamaha sarve vayamatav param. Hey Arjuna, you have always been existing. Or everyone around has always been there. I have always been there. We were there in the past. We were today. We are here today. We will be there in future as well. It is just that the body with which the Atman dwells, that keeps changing. Now, Arjuna could have asked, hey Krishna, I understand you are with me today, right in front. Where were you with me in the past? And where will you with me in the future? If Arjuna would have asked that question at that very time, Krishna would have been compelled to answer that I have always been your companion, hey Arjuna. Krishna needn't have waited several chapters to declare this fundamental truth. Arjuna, luckily for us, did not ask that question. Arjuna could have asked, I can easily see you, hey Krishna, as my companion, reside with me in Mahabharata, on Kurukshetra, in this chariot. But where were you before and where will you be after? The answer would have been simple. Hey Arjuna, I have been guiding you not only in Kurukshetra, I have always been your companion, whether you realize it or not. The Paramatma has always been the companion of the Jivatma. It is just that the Jivatma fails to recognize, just like how Arjuna failed to recognize Krishna as the Paramatma guiding him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Later on, Krishna moves on, and in the Gita he then points out to Arjuna saying, you are not alone in this journey. Even when the Dehi takes different kinds of bodies, body after body, you are not alone. As you suffer through this samsara, I suffer more, hey Arjuna, because I am there. No, this is compassion of Bhagavan. He does not just let us be on our own. He is there with us, witnessing our adventures and misadventures. He is ever waiting. He is ever willing. He is ever working. He is ever waiting. In spite of our neglect, for several lifetimes, we keep neglecting him. We keep neglecting him, thinking that we are on our own, thinking that we are independent, thinking that I am this body, thinking that summum bonum of life is to fulfill the desires of this body. Life after life, we neglect. But then Krishna neglects our neglect and he is patiently waiting. He is ever waiting, just like how the Upanishad says, waiting for us to just turn around and acknowledge his presence. He is ever willing to do anything that we want, to intervene in his own laws that he has set. He is ready to break his own laws, provided we make the earnest request to him. He is ever willing. even if we continue to displease him, every act which is not aligned with him, which is not aligned with dharma that we do, displeases him. But as we keep on displeasing him, but he is ever willing to please us. Amidst all kinds of atrocities that we commit, offenses that we keep committing, once in a while, we possibly reach out to him and asking for something, and he delivers faithfully. Whether we are faithful or not, he is more faithful. He is ever willing to do everything and anything that we want, and he is ever working. He is Purna. There is no need for Bhagavan to do any act, because he is one who is completely self-content. He is Purna. There is nothing that he needs. We do all actions because we need something. We feel a lack of something. If there is a sense of completeness, then we also don't need to do any act, any actions, any activities. But in spite of that, he continues to work for our behalf, on our behalf. And he is always available to us as our Antaryami. It seems there was this bhakta who was taking a walk one fine day on the beach. Maybe I have told this story many times before, but I'm reminded of this once again. There was this bhakta who was taking an early morning walk on the beach. And then all of a sudden, he had an extraordinary vision. An extraordinary vision. As he looked up in the sky, he could see his entire life come unfolding right in front of his eyes. He could see every segment of his life, every incident, every scene unfold like a movie right in front of his eyes. The entire sky was filled with frame after frame from his entire life, right? From the time he took birth until that very day, he could see every scene playing out vividly. And at the same time, he also noticed something very interesting. For every scene, he could see on the sand two sets of footprints. One was his and one was Krishna's. He was so thrilled that he was able to experience this extraordinary vision. But as he was soaking in and he was further examining the various frames of his life, he also noticed something very unusual that bothered him. He could see that when against some scenes, there was only one pair of footprints. While there many scenes, he could see two pairs of footprints, his and Krishna's. Many of the scenes, he could see only one. And he also found out those were the times when he was actually suffering, when he actually suffered, when he was troubled, when he was burdened. And immediately, he was so shocked and frustrated. And then he said, "Hey Krishna, how can you do this to me? I tried to devote my entire life to you. And I could see you were there with me as my companion. I know you are my companion. I could see you walk along with me as my companion almost throughout my life. But many times when I needed you, when I suffered the most, I don't see you." Krishna chuckled and he said, "You possibly are not getting the full picture, my friend. Those times when you are troubled and when you only see one footprint there, one set of footprint, and you just look at them deeply, you could see, and you could see those are not ordinary pair of footprints. They're not ordinary footprints, but were Krishna's footprints. It was during those times I was holding you on my shoulders and carrying you. Those were the times when you couldn't be on your own, and I was there very much, doing everything for you." That was the kind of revelation which changed this man's perspective in terms of how Krishna, come what may, is ever willing, ever waiting, ever working. Throughout this journey that the Atman goes through, this recognition that the Paramatma, the companion, is available for the Atman for guidance, for counsel, for friendship, for whatever, does not occur because of this deep rooted identification that this Atman has with something which is so very temporary. This is what we discussed in the last session. When we look at the triad of reality, the three tattvas, the Shastras call, when we say reality, tattva, tattva is threefold in nature. Tattva traya. Bhokta bhogyam preritaram chamatva justastatastena amritatvameti. Amritatva, immortality. For us to gain moksha, tattva jnana is a prerequisite. Now, when we examine the nature of these three tattvas, then what Krishna is now going to teach, give the directive, becomes a lot more clear for us. What are the three tattvas that we repeatedly keep discussing and what Krishna teaches throughout the Gita? The achit tattva. Achit. Chit is the sentient Purusha, the Jivatma. Achit, the opposite of chit, which is insentient. Sentience means being endowed with knowledge, being endowed with consciousness, being aware. That awareness that I exist, that is consciousness, that is knowledge. So the Jivatma, the Atman, is endowed with knowledge, sentience. And matter, Prakriti, Achit Tattva, does not have sentience, does not have knowledge, no consciousness. Consciousness is contracted so much that it is almost zero. And the third is Ishvara, Krishna, the Bhagavad Tattva. Now, if we examine the Chit Tattva, each of us, when we look at the other two Tattvas, there is something very important that we can learn from both the Tattvas. Now, when we look at Ishvara Tattva, Bhagavan is endowed with two very important qualities: Jnana and Swatantriya. Swatantriya means freedom, total freedom. Because Bhagavan is not dependent on anyone. He is the supreme controller. So therefore, Swatantriya means freedom, total freedom, and Jnana. These are two qualities of Bhagavan. On the other hand, when we look at the Achit Tattva also has two important qualities. One is Ajnana, no Jnana. The second is Paratantriya, which means total dependence. Achit Tattva, matter, is completely dependent on everything else. This book will not move by itself. I have to lift it, move it from this place to this place. It exists for my sake. It is my utility. It is Achit Tattva. Pararthyam means total dependence. Some of these terms we need to remember because they are so very important. Because later when we discuss Charama Shloka, we need to once again reflect on some of these terms that we discuss. Pararthyam means total dependence. Swatantriyam, total independence. These are two opposites. Ishvara, Krishna has total independence. He can do anything at his will. He willed, creation happened. He wills, dissolution happens. He wills, he protects. He is Satya Sankalpa. It is with his Sankalpa alone. He creates, he protects, he destroys. So therefore, and he is endowed with infinite jnana. Now look at these two tattvas, Ishvara tattva, achit tattva, exactly the two opposites. Ishvara tattva endowed with jnana and endowed with swatantriya. Achit tattva is endowed with ajnana and paratantriya, pararthyam, total dependence. Now, what are the two characteristics of the chit tattva, the individual soul, the jivatma? This is where we have to now start looking at what is the true nature of this individual soul, this atma. This individual soul has two things to learn from both these tattvas. One, it has to be Ishvara like when it comes to jnana, and it has to be like achit like when it comes to pararthyam. Unfortunately, the jivatma does exactly the opposite. It identifies itself with achit and becomes achit like, which means becomes endowed with ajnana and starts to think it has swatantriya like Ishvara. This is so, therefore, the root cause of all our ills is exact. When we say this misidentification, what is this misidentification? Identifying ourselves with achit tattva when it comes to jnana and believing the myth that I am the controller, I am independent, I am the ruler, I am the Ishvara, when I am not. So this is the root cause of all ills. And until and unless we address this root cause, it is impossible for us to find a way out of the cycle of samsara. The jivatma has to recognize that its swatantriya, the freedom that is being bestowed to it, is only limited. So we'll come back to this topic of free will again. This keeps coming on throughout the Gita. We keep asking the questions. We keep getting greater clarity as we go along. Now, the free will is being given for only one purpose. Not to misidentify with achit tattva, but to turn around and recognize that it is Bhagavan who alone is swatantriya and I am subject to his rulership alone. Now, Arjuna has been told in several ways throughout the Gita, repeatedly. But like us, Arjuna also did not really understand how I cannot have my own independence. I am able to, it seems like I can carry out to do many things independently. How is that Bhagavan is repeatedly saying you are not independent, you are dependent, you are dependent? Now, Arjuna did not realize that because Arjuna was still able-bodied. When age starts to creep in, slowly some wisdom will also come. Because until certain time, we think we are independent, but we don't realize that we are totally dependent on our body. We may not recognize this or acknowledge this openly, but for everything and anything that we need to do in this very life, aren't we dependent on this body which has so much limitation? And when I say body, we need to then extend it to beyond the physical sense organs to the mind and the content in the mind. This is where the problem is. Our dependence is not only on the body, the physical body, our dependence is on the mind and the content in the mind. We start to identify with what is there inside the mind. My identity is nothing but the content of my mind. We all think we are so very different to each other only because what we have inside our mind is different. If we take that out, what else remains? So this identification is so very strong. While we are dependent totally, we do not easily acknowledge that dependence. We keep thinking we are independent. Krishna is leading us towards making one choice. There is only one choice. He says, you have to be controlled anyway. Choose who is your controller, hey Arjuna. The only choice that you have, hey Arjuna, is to choose whether you want to be controlled by your body and your mind, or you want to be controlled by the one who controls everything, including your body and your mind. That is the only choice. So therefore that swatantriya, that limited free will that is given to us, is to make this choice. And after having told Arjuna that, hey Arjuna, it is important for you to realize that as long as you fight the battle on your own, you are not going to reach your destination. I am very much there, and let me work with you. Let me clear all the obstacles that come in your way. Surrender to me, take shelter of me, listen to me. Otherwise, you will only perish. He keeps repeatedly saying this. Now, he comes to a stage where he needs to give an ultimatum to Arjuna. It is in that context, Shlokas 61 and 62 becomes so very important. Krishna makes that categoric clarion call, hey Arjuna, it is not complex. Life is not really complex. You may think you will have to make thousands of choices. We all think we are all infinite choice makers, no doubt. But Krishna is saying, if you really examine all your choices, and if you really need to simplify life, there's only one choice that you need to make. Either choose me or choose the world. The choice is between choosing the world or choosing the world maker. That is the only one choice. And depending on the choice that we make, our destiny is determined. Therefore, here he says, Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. Ishvara sarvabhutanam. He says, hey Arjuna, I am your companion, your indweller. I reside very much inside you, in the region of your heart. Hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. Hey Arjuna, Ishvara sarvabhutanam. God is not less present in the godless. Whether I subscribe to him or not doesn't matter to him. He is completely impartial. He dwells inside everyone. Whether I subscribe to him or not. No, my subscription to the law of gravity doesn't really matter. Doesn't matter. The laws work. They take their own course. Similarly, whether I subscribe to the laws of spiritual laws and the lawmaker does not matter. He very much resides. This is the beauty of Bhagavan's compassion. He says, I am there with you all the time. It is up to you. The choice is yours. To exercise the choice of choosing me over everything else is very much yours. But until then, my job is to wait. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. I am there for only one reason. Why? Because later someone should not complain that when I needed him, he was not available. Bhagavan is so very compassionate that he does not give us an opportunity to say, when I needed you, you were not there, hey Krishna. He is there. When we need him, he is right there, where and when we need him. And through his presence, he is constantly wanting to be heard. Whether we hear him or not hear him is our choice. And what he says, Brahmayan Sarvabhutani. Why is he there with every Jivatma as a companion? The word Brahmayan is very interesting. Causing to wander. He causes every Jivatma to wander. Now, what is the difference between wandering and traveling? There is one significant difference. When we say traveling, there is a purpose to a travel. When we say wandering, means we are purposeless, we are lost. But then we immediately say, why is Krishna causing me to wander all the time in samsara? He has a plan for us. But then immediately when we say Krishna has a plan, which means every mistake that I do are Krishna's mistake. Our mistakes are not Krishna's plans, but Krishna's plans accommodates our mistakes. He is so very accommodating. Every time, it's like we get into the car. These days, the GPS is so very advanced. You switch on Google GPS and it starts giving you directions. It says take right, you keep taking left. Take right, take left. Take right, take left. But it dutifully recalibrates and keeps coming back, giving you the new direction, giving you the new routes that you can take constantly all the time. Krishna has been doing this not during one short journey. He's been doing this not this lifetime. Imagine how many lifetimes it would have happened. And when we constantly take the wrong directions, obviously we are lost. We are wandering. Hriddeshe Arjuna Tishtati is there constantly saying take right, take right. No, I will take left, I will take, I know better, I know best, I know best. And then when we get lost, then we start saying, maybe after all, he did not come to my, to my support when I needed him the most. So here is saying, Arjuna, I am the indweller, your companion throughout your journey, not only right now, even before in your earlier lifetime, and I will be your companion, dutiful companion, even in your next lifetime. Brahmayan sarvabhutani. Yantra rudhani mayaya. Yantra rudhani mayaya. What is this yantra? Yantra means instrument. Yantra is vehicle, this body. Yantra arudhani. By mounting, we are placed, mounted on yantra, and this yantra is taking us wherever it wants to go, and we are just getting dragged along with it. Maya, by Krishna's Maya. What is Krishna's Maya? Krishna's Maya is this wonderful Prakriti Mandala. It is Maya because it constantly keeps changing. What we see is not what is, because we are deluded to believe in certain things which keep changing all the time. That is why Krishna, way back in the 7th chapter, he makes a declaration. Daivi hyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Arjuna, he qualifies Maya by two important words. Daivi hyesha gunamayi. Daivi, he says, divine. This Maya is divine, he says. Why? It belongs to him only. He is the Mayavi. The owner of Maya is Mayavi. He owns both Prakriti and Purusha. Jiva, Jagat, Janardhana. The Jiva and Jagat belong to Janardhana. Jagat is Maya. Why it is Maya? It is constantly changing all the time. And we believe in the myth that things are permanent, whereas everything is impermanent. That is why it is Maya. One moment it is there, the next moment it is not there. One moment it has a form, the next moment the form changes. This very body is also like that, changing every moment, every minute. Some cells are dying, some cells are getting birth. So it goes on and on and on and on. So, and this, Krishna says, overcoming this Maya is not easy here, Arjuna. Daivi Hesha Gunamayi, made of three gunas. Mama Maya, after all, it is this material nature is so very formidable to overcome, then we ask this question, if it is so formidable to overcome, what is the way? Again, going back to that choice that we need to make. We can choose to be controlled by material nature, or we can choose to be controlled by the controller who also controls the material nature. Is it Maya or the Mayavi? The choice is very simple. Do I choose the Mayavi or do I choose the Maya? Unfortunately, we are so deluded by Maya that we choose Maya over the Mayavi. The Mayavi becomes invisible. The Maya makes the Mayavi invisible. No? Look at the Leela of Bhagavan. His Maya makes him invisible to us. And we make a choice to choose his Maya over him, and we stay deluded. And until we reverse our choice, it is impossible for us to get out of this Maya. So therefore he says, Mamevaye prapadyante Maya metam tarantite. That's exactly what in Shloka 62 he says, Tameva sharanam gaccha sarvabhavena bharata. Tameva sharanam gaccha. Now, Krishna has been using the principle of Sharanagati in many different ways throughout the Gita. Sharanagati, Prapatti Shastra, is a Guhya Shastra. In the Gita, Krishna does not reveal the Prapatti Shastra in its entirety until the Charma Shloka. But throughout the Gita, we do see references. We see right in the beginning, in the second chapter itself, Arjuna surrenders to Krishna. Karpanya dosho pakata swapavaha prachamitvam dharma sammoda chetaha yashreyasya nishitam bruhitam me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. In fact, the Gita Shastra begins with surrender. It begins with, so therefore the start is surrender, the summit is surrender, everything in between also has to be surrender. It's just that it is not revealed in such a way that we can understand the profundity and significance of Sharanagati very easily. Why? Because of our identification with achit tattva. As long as we are identified with the achit tattva and remain as ajnanis and think we are endowed with swatantriya, it is impossible for us to understand Sharanagati Tattva. Because if somebody says, even in our day-to-day lives, in our regular usage, when we say surrender, we would possibly think, what? Surrender? Should I give away my self-respect? No, surrendering means self-defeating. When you say surrender to someone means it's a blow to your self-respect. Your ego will not allow you to surrender to anyone, leave alone someone who is not even visible. So therefore, it is not, while the principle of Sharanagati may seem very simple, it is very profound and so deep, not easy to comprehend it, because we are always rooted in ahankara. We are overcome by our own swatantriya, misplaced swatantriya. Why I say misplaced? Because if we really look at it, our ability to control is so very limited. Yet we keep telling ourselves that somehow I will manage to control everything in my life. Repeatedly, every day, we can easily experience 100 things where clearly we see things are not in our control. All that is needed is for us to examine our own day-to-day lives. We will get 100 examples as to how things are not in our control. And yet, we keep telling ourselves that somehow I will bring everything under my control. So therefore, Krishna is bringing that discussion to a conclusion here. Sharanagati for a starter, Sharanagati as a sustainer, and before leading to Sharanagati, the summit, He is giving a carrion call here. Says, hey Arjuna, tameva sharanam gaccha. Sarva bhavena bharata. Sarva bhavena. Wholeheartedly, body, mind, and your Atman. Atma nivedanam. You have to also surrender your very Atman to the Paramatma. Sarva bhavena bharata. Tat prasadat param shantim. No, Sharanagati also has a several byproducts here. Tat prasadat param shantim, that serenity, tranquility of the mind. When we surrender to Krishna, he grants us that tranquility, that serenity, where we can then accept the things that we cannot change in life. We get the courage to change the things we can. And more importantly, we gain the wisdom to know the difference. Sharanagati, therefore, brings two important byproducts: peace and purpose. Why peace? Because clearly our scope of control, our area of influence becomes a lot more clear. And within that scope and within that zone of influence, we know that we can change. We can bring about changes. We can exercise our free will. There is a limited swatantriya, very limited, to exercise our free will. But then, purpose. We know that the purpose of that free will is to align to his will. This is the secret of Sharanagati, aligning to. So immediately, two important questions which come to our mind. What is his will? What is Bhagavan's will? And what does it mean to align my will with his will? These are the two important questions that we keep constantly asking. What is Bhagavan's will? What is Krishna's will? We always keep saying Krishna Sankalpa. It is his will that everything happens. His will, if we have to sum up in one sentence, his will is as simple that we get back to where we belong. Krishna's will is that we stop wandering in the samsara and get back to him. That is his will. Now, when we say his will manifests in so many different ways. So how do I know his will? It's like saying, how do I know the will of the ruler of this land? I will know the will of the ruler of the land through the laws that he has implemented. When I drive on the highway and if it says 80 kilometers per hour is the speed limit, then if I have to be aligned with the will of the ruler of the land, I have to not cross the speed limit. So when I say aligning my will with the ruler's will is essentially not breaking his laws. So similarly, aligning my will with Krishna's will is not breaking Krishna's laws. And how do I know Krishna's laws? Through the Gita, through his Shastras. And what do the Shastras teach? How to get back to him. So, we don't need to complicate to find the answer to the question, what is Bhagavan's will, is so simple. His will is that we get back to him. And our will is being given to us only for one purpose, is to align with his will, which means to do what he wants us to do, by doing which we reach him. That's why he says, Sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Sthanam prapsyasi. Until we do not submit our will, align our will to Krishna's will, we are always under the forces of Maya. Daivi Hyesha Gunamaya. Look at even Arjuna. Now when we look at how this Prakriti, Maya, attacks us, twofold attack that we need to be always watchful. One is a very simple, straightforward, the other is very sophisticated. Now, what attacked Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is a very sophisticated attack, not the regular straightforward attack that normally we are all subject to. Now, Arjuna is one who has overcome kama, krodha, lobha. We know that. Three gates to hell is very clearly kama, krodha, lobha. Now, Prakriti, Maya attacks us through temptation. This is the common attack. We are constantly subject to temptations of all kind. Temptation is nothing but alluring the mind to do something knowing that it is wrong. We know clearly it is wrong, but we are still impelled and compelled to indulge and commit. This is one attack of Maya. Now, in the case of Arjuna, this is not the attack. Because why? Arjuna was somebody who could easily overcome the force of kama. The great Urvashi could not win over him. He could easily say no to Urvashi and stay away from her. He looked at Urvashi and said, "You are like my mother." Such was Arjuna's control over kama. Krodha, Arjuna never lost it when it, even in Dyuta, when Dushasana and Duryodhana were committing atrocities, Bhima lost his temper, Arjuna was able to control his temper to a large extent. And he never said even a single statement against Yudhishthira. Such was Arjuna's prowess of conquering his own krodha. What to say of lobha? Arjuna, the greatest warrior, could have easily coveted and won the kingdom for himself. Never coveted. It always knew that it belonged to Yudhishthira, his brother, elder brother. Now, so therefore, when Maya attacked Arjuna, it is not this ordinary attack of temptation. What is the other attack? The sophisticated attack of confusion. In the case of temptation, we know what is right, but we end up still doing wrong. Unfortunately, when the attack is so sophisticated, our discriminatory ability to know what is right and wrong is obscured. In one case, it is the mind which is allured. The other case, it is the intelligence which is allured. So, Maya has this method of attacking either the mind or the intelligence. In our case, it attacks both at the same time. So, completely lost. Now, the only way we can overcome this force of Maya is we have this free will, no doubt, to exercise our free will. But then we have to ask this question to ourselves: is our free will really free? Because by what is free will? Ability to choose our desires in a simple way. When we repeatedly choose the wrong desires over a period of time, repeatedly choosing wrong desires, our free will also gets compromised. So it's like, repeatedly when we go, keep browsing the same site, after a while, we don't need to even type the address, it takes us automatically. Similarly, our free will gets compromised. So what we think is free will is also not free, because it is clouded by repeatedly choosing the same desires again and again and again. So our vasanas give a coloring to our free will. So therefore, exercising our free will to choose the right desires is also not easy. This is why Krishna says, that is impossible here, Arjuna. Daivi Hyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. You can keep struggling, but because of the forces of vasanas are so very formidable, because this is a product of several lifetimes, it is not easy. This is a fight where you will 99.99% you will lose. So therefore, the only thing that you can do is use that little tiny weeny free will to surrender it to me and let my will do the job. So this is exactly going back to that two birds perched on a tree. That change in that direction is essentially looking at Krishna and saying, hey Krishna, can you start doing your job now? I request you. Until then, he is there. This is exactly what happened to Draupadi as well. She was struggling all along, throughout. She was subject to unimaginable kind of tortures and insults and offenses, unpardonable, unimaginable. And she believed that help will come her way in the form of her own husbands, in the form of elderly statesmen, and she believed she herself could wriggle her way out somehow. And Krishna was waiting, ever willing, ever working. All that he needed was that one call. Anka Chakra Gadapane Dwaraka Nilayachyuta Govinda Pundarikaksharakshamaam Sharanagatam. And there magic happened. And magic will happen when we exercise our free will, recognizing his divine will and submit ourselves to him. And then he says, when that happens, Tameva Sharanam Gaccha. When that happens, Sarvabhavena Bharata, Tat Prasadat, my grace will work magic. And you will get lasting peace in this very life. And along with the peace, you will also get the place that you deserve. Peace and place are what Pandavas have been struggling. Somehow never went together. When they wanted peace, they never had place. When they wanted place, there was no peace. But Krishna is saying, I guarantee you both. I'll give you peace, I'll give you place. Come over. Are we ready is the question. We will continue with this countdown to Charma Shloka in the coming weeks. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamastu.